Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Courtside View webcast. This is sports editor Joe Walljasper alongside Tribune basketball beat writer Steve Walentik. Steve, since last we spoke to the camera, a lot has happened. First of all, Missouri's season ended in the first round of the NCAA Tournament, and then the fun really starts. Mike Anderson, who has said he was going to stay at Missouri until he retired, did not do so, although he could potentially come back and retire, we suppose. But he goes to Arkansas. Then we have a kind of a wild few weeks looking for a new coach at Missouri, which finally lands on Frank Haith, a guy who neither one of us gave a second thought to.
Sure we did. Well. We all saw it coming.
Anyway, let's just get our thoughts on this. Frank Haith, what do you think?
Surprising is the biggest thing. Definitely not somebody that was ever on my radar. I know wasn't on your radar. We both, days before this happened, came up with our top 5 remaining candidates after Matt Painter didn't go well for Missouri. And I don't remember. You did have a Texas assistant on your list, that's so right. You were closer than me, I guess. But it really surprising. This is not a guy that you thought was trending upward in the coaching ranks based on his record at Miami. In fact, a lot of people down in South Florida thought he was maybe on the hot seat. So it was surprising that this was a guy that they came up with, but obviously Mike Alden sees something. I don't know exactly what that is yet. Likes his recruiting background. I guess appreciates the fact that maybe Miami was a pretty tough job, but I don't know that anyone can say for sure that this is going to work out splendidly at this point. You're just going to have to see.
Yeah. Part of the problem is that it was sort of the hopes got raised so high by the flirtation with Matt Painter, which seemed like a very realistic possibility, I think, from everyone we talked to during the process. I mean, I don't think anybody ever told us it was a done deal, but they just said, he's seriously considering it. And I think he did. But that would have been obviously the home run hire, a guy who just consistently has won, and there would be no reason why he couldn't do it here, I didn't think. So he was the guy that I think would have really united the fans, and nobody would have had any complaint about that hire. Then when you don't get him, then you go to a guy that, like you said, there was some question about whether he might be fired this year, and I think certainly next year, if he didn't get it done, probably would have been. I mean, it's a little bit of a head scratcher. And it doesn't mean it can't work. It just means, if it does work, Mike Alden is going to be considered, some sort of expert talent scout because he saw what no one else did. But if it doesn't work, there's going to be a whole lot of "I told you so"s going around. And I mean, it's sort of, I think Mike maybe in a certain sense kind of hitched his wagon to this guy because when you go that far outside the box on a coaching hire, which he did, then you really are essentially putting your own neck on the line, because when things go wrong here, if they do go wrong, I don't think people are going to say, I can't believe Frank Haith is losing his games. They're going to say, I can't believe Mike Alden hired Frank Haith.
Exactly. Yeah, and you just look at the ACC record, 43-69. It's hard to explain that away in any way. I mean, his best season at Miami was 23-11 and 8-8, which is what Missouri just did last year, and it was considered a disappointing year. I know that it's a tough job. Frank Haith does have the best winning percentage of any Miami coach since they restarted the program in 1985. That said, there isn't a whole lot of actual accomplishment. He's been to one NCAA tournament. He's gone to one second round. He's gone to 4 NITs, which is good, but it's not the sort of thing that Missouri expects out of its basketball program. This is a place that's been to a lot of NCAA tournaments. It's trying to get to the Final Four. Is Frank Haith the guy who can do that? I don't know, but there's nothing right now that you see in the resume that makes you think absolutely yes.
The one thing that we did note from seeing him yesterday and hearing him talk was he would be a guy that I think would really impress you in an interview. He comes across very well. He won over the room pretty quickly, I thought. He dealt with this whole skepticism about his hire in the best way possible, which was just sort of get it out there right in the beginning and not pretend this isn't
and make light of it.
Make light of it and kind of, make his point, standing up for himself of what he thought he accomplished at Miami without being, a jerk about it. So I think he made a great impression, and I think it probably, won over a few people, and it's just now going to be a matter of, all right, now you got to go recruit. You got 3 scholarships, and then you got to win some games. So
I think
you can't say it was a right or wrong hire yet. You can have an opinion, which is what we have.
And even before we see him hit the recruiting trail, I think a big thing that to me anyway is going to be a big statement about what he might do is what kind of staff we see him put together. I think that's going to be very key for the kind of success he has. I do think assistant coaches are very important in college basketball. You got to have guys who can recruit. You also, I think, there are some questions about how he is X's and O's wise, making in-game adjustments and things like that, and finishing out games where his teams have had leads. I think you'd like to see him get an experienced assistant coach that has a proven track record of being able to do some of those things. So I'm going to be interested to see who all he brings in here with him to help him continue on with this program.
And like almost every coach in every sport that people care about at Missouri, there will be questions about whether you can get kids from St. Louis, which seems to be a consistent problem on football or basketball. I mean, it just seems like, for whatever reason, that city is not inclined to send its best and brightest to Missouri. So if he can do that, if anyone could have done that this year, it would have been quite an asset. But if he can do that in the future, that'll be a big upgrade over what kind of the one thing Mike Anderson couldn't do. One of the things he couldn't do was, recruit St. Louis.
If he can recruit St. Louis, everyone's going to wish that he was here a year earlier, because certainly there was plenty of talent available in that part of the state in this particular class, and I do think that's something that raises legitimate concerns about the future of this Missouri program right now, is the fact that it didn't land any of those guys, and there's a lack of commitments for not only next year but the year after, and the previous staff really hasn't capitalized off of the success of the Elite Eight the way that people would have liked or expected. And I think Frank Haith stepping into a good situation immediately, and that he's got an experienced roster that I think probably underachieved a little bit. We've debated that already, but I think it's going to be very important this summer for him to make some headway on the recruiting trail, because otherwise this thing could start going downhill pretty quickly. When this all began coming out on Sunday night, that Frank Haith was the guy that had been hired that nobody had even thought about before, I think the immediate reaction, maybe more than I've ever seen with any hire at Missouri, was just complete outrage. And what sort of thought process could have possibly gone into this? Now, Mike Alden has a pretty good track record hiring. I think obviously everyone will lord over him that he chose Quinn Snyder over Bill Self, which was obviously a big mistake. But he's had some pretty good hires in that. Gary Pinkel was a guy not too many people had heard of and has done a fantastic job with football. Mike Anderson was a good hire in difficult circumstances. Do you think he deserves the benefit of the doubt, or do you think this is just puzzling and maybe he was just out somewhere in left field making a decision that was crazy? I think you have to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because I do think you're right. I do think the track record is good, and even the Quinn Snyder hire that blew up in his face looked really good at the time. I mean, everybody now will lord that over him, that he went the way he did, but there were a limited number of people who were arguing with him at the time that decision was made. Quinn Snyder's star was certainly brighter than Bill Self's at that point in time. I think, actually, if anything, that's maybe an example of why we should be cautious before evaluating these things, is you just don't know until you see how it works out. I do think there are reasons to be skeptical. They're all legit. As you said, Frank Haith did a good job yesterday winning over the room. You could see how he would be a charismatic recruiter and somebody who could relate to people and make some headway there that I don't think Mike Anderson was necessarily as good at. But whether or not he can win, I have no idea. And I guess you have to give Mike Alden the benefit of the doubt from the standpoint that he's the athletic director and it's his call. But you're right, that this is going to be on him if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, just from talking to him through the years, he seems to be a guy that has a pretty good grasp on what's going on in college athletics and, who the movers and shakers are. So it's not like, he's really out of touch. I mean, that's what made the decision so weird. So it's possible that he knows something we don't, and Lord knows that would not be the only thing he would know that we don't. So I mean, I'm just the one thing that bothers me about this one is, it's not an unknown guy at a mid-major you've never heard of, but who has been successful. There's not an assistant coach who, for all we know, could be great, but just hasn't had a chance yet. It's a guy that's had a chance and hasn't knocked the ball out of the park.
It seems like there's a lot of rolling the dice that the Miami job really is this bad that no one could win there. And maybe that's true, and maybe it's not. I do know Leonard Hamilton had more success at Miami than Frank Haith did. That said, Leonard Hamilton was there 10 years to get to 3 NCAA tournaments. I think Frank Haith went to 1 and 7. I don't know if maybe the next 2 years or 3 years he would have gone to 2 more and they would have been equal. It's just impossible to know.
But Leonard Hamilton also went to Florida State and had more success than he had at Miami. So, Missouri's probably a better job than Florida State. So maybe you could see an upward trend with any coach that leads there. We'll see.
Yeah.
Let's kind of look back a little bit on the Mike Anderson era and judge maybe what his pluses and minuses were as a coach and maybe how you feel like he left the program.
Well, definitely better than it was. I mean, that's just not something anyone can argue because things were really bad here. That said, I think he peaked in 2008, 2009, that season, and the last 2 years were trending downward, I think, and there are legitimate reasons to wonder if he was going to get it back up with the recruiting issues that I've already spoken about. I think not having anybody committed for the 2011 recruiting class when you've got now 3 scholarships available. They only had 1 going into the season, but still, no commitments, not being able to get Otto Porter, who is the state's best unsigned player or uncommitted player, on board when they were on him before anybody else in the country, really, I think is a knock on him. Now, maybe he would have been able to close the deal, and maybe Frank Haith will now as well. Not having then 6 scholarships available for 2012 and not having anybody committed. I know the previous coaching staff has been in on a lot of good players, but they haven't signed that many good players. And a couple of the bigger names that they did sign, the higher talents or higher level talents that they did sign, were guys who didn't make it here. Tony Mitchell, Keith DeWitt were guys that were really considered to be pretty elite talents. And one of the reasons that they got them was because they had academic issues that people elsewhere stayed away. And I think you wonder about the kind of job he was really doing as a recruiter, which is obviously how you succeed in college basketball, is to get talent.
Yeah, I think immediately after he left, you saw some people kind of just knocking him. I would not find fault at all with what he did on the court. I mean, to say he walked into a bad situation would be one of the classic understatements, I think. I mean, it was a disaster. And to get it up and going and within 3 years to be in the Elite Eight, I thought that was fantastic. I'm not wild about the situation, the way he left. I thought that was disingenuous. I think that to say, well, at the time I thought I was going to retire here, and then 2 weeks later I didn't think anymore. You don't change your mind that way. I mean, you had to know at the time. I think probably he just thought, if I say I'm going to retire here, people could ask me this question. I can end the season in peace, and then I can do what I want to do. I mean, so I lost some respect for him there because I did sort of believe him when he said that, because I had no reason not to, because in the past he had not said anything, and that seemed to be his MO. And then when he does say it, I guess I took his word for it. So I was disappointed with that. And then I was a little bit like you. I think you can say Frank Haith is walking into a good initial situation with a lot of seniors, which is true to an extent, although I think now it becomes the perception is he's got to make the NCAA tournament this year, and if he doesn't, he's not a very good coach, and B, the cupboard's completely bare. So I think he didn't leave the greatest situation in his wake on several different levels. So it's tough. But if Frank Haith's one of his big drawing points is as a recruiter, now he's got the chance to prove it, and time's a wasting basically.
And I think the other thing you'd have to say about Anderson in terms of Frank Haith recruiting is he'll have an easier time going to anybody's house now, any top player's house, and saying, I'm from Missouri.
I'm going to be
here. I'm going to be here and I'm from Missouri, because Missouri now is a program, whether it's a new coach or not, it's still somebody who's been in the tournament 3 years in a row, which is not what Mike Anderson was starting out as. I think you have to, again, say that Anderson did a really good job building a team in a hurry and getting it back to national relevance, certainly relevance within the Big 12 Conference. But he didn't take that next step. And there's nothing from what we look at right now that says he was about to take that next step either, because he was, in fact, letting things, it seemed like, fall off on the recruiting trail.
And part of it was not being able to sign the kids he wanted from Missouri, but the other part is maybe not having a good enough eye for who the good players were in Missouri, because a lot of kids went elsewhere that would have gladly come to Missouri, and you saw them in the NCAA tournament doing pretty well. So that's the other side of the story. I think as a talent evaluator, maybe in that way, not the greatest either. Looking forward at Missouri, okay, now the late signing period begins this month. Maybe what do you think Missouri needs to do, what's Frank Haith need to do to make this team the best it could be going forward next year?
Well, I think he needs to be on the phone with Otto Porter at the first possible moment.
Now, Otto Porter is, if you don't know, 6'9", kind of an athletic guy who can play basically almost any position, but he's kind of a skinny guy that's probably going to be more of a wing player.
Ultimately, in college, I think he more projects to a big three-man maybe. We don't know exactly how Missouri is going to look on the court under Frank Haith. At Missouri, he's under Mike Anderson, he certainly would have played the power forward position, kind of like Lawrence Bowers does, as a skinny power forward who plays on the perimeter a lot and faces up. But he's the top talent, as far as I can tell, that Missouri would realistically have a shot at right now. And I think it would behoove this new staff, whenever it's assembled, to do anything it can to try to get him to come here, because I think he's got a ton of potential. And as far as other pieces that they need to add to the roster, I think they need, even if they get Otto Porter, I think they need to add another big guy, because, as you say, he's not a guy right now who's going to go bang inside with Big 12 caliber players, and this team needs somebody else who's going to do that. I think Ricardo Ratliff fell off late in the year, but overall you could say had a pretty solid first year at the Division I level. I think Lawrence Bowers took another step forward in his development late in the season. I think he was really inconsistent early, but what you saw of him the last 5-6 games, I think if you could get that from him next year, I think you feel comfortable with what you have in the front court from a starting position, but you need somebody behind those guys. And I don't know if there's anyone that these coaches are going to be able to go find right now, but they better look.
The other thing about Haith is that the way he talked about it, he likes to play inside out, which, you want to throw the ball in the post and then he can either score or draw a double team and pass it back out. So he would need not just a big guy to go rebound, but a guy who is a good enough offensive threat that people are going to double team him to get the offense generated there. So I don't know how many of those guys are just sort of wandering around the streets unsigned in April, but there's always a chance you can get, there's coaching changes this time of year, and he even referenced that in his press conference. Sometimes you can get kids who are don't feel like they're going to fit into their current situation with the coaching change, and maybe you can get someone like that to jump on board and come to Missouri. And
one thing that maybe is working in his favor is if you're in a situation like Missouri is right now, where you have 3 scholarships available, you have an experienced team coming back. They don't have to get 3 guys who are going to come in and play right away.
They don't have to get 3 guys at all.
They don't have to get 3 guys at all. But you would think that at least one of those scholarships, if not 2, could be available for somebody who might be a transfer candidate who comes in, sits out a year, learns the ropes in whatever system is installed, and then is ready to help right away when the next season, when you've got all those other newcomers coming on board.
And lastly, we're kind of talking about it like it's a done deal that everyone from Missouri is coming back. It's not necessarily true. Kim English and Lawrence Bowers have declared for the NBA draft, but I think even by their own admission, they're probably just sort of getting an evaluation or coming back. I don't think either one of them really is thinking they're going to get drafted. And then there's obviously the questions about Missouri players transferring out, mainly being, I think the one everyone is kind of fixated on is Phil Pressey. And he has not said one way or the other. He wasn't at the press conference because he had the class conflict, so no one was able to talk to him then. Most of the players seem to act like he's happy here and aren't that concerned about it. I think Frank Haith actually was quoted as saying he thinks he'll stay. So that would be big if they could hang on to him.
I think that's true. And the other thing with Phil is the assumption is if he does transfer, he would be looking to transfer to Arkansas, since that's where Mike Anderson is. As of right now, that can't happen because if all of Arkansas's commitments make it to school and everybody else who still has eligibility from last year comes back, then they're actually one scholarship over. So unless some people start leaving Fayetteville, there's not room for Phil right now. So I think that's something that people should consider before they assume that he might be leaving. He might end up deciding to go elsewhere, but even if he does, it's not necessarily Arkansas.
All right. Well, Steve, get some sleep. It's been a long month, and we will join you again for more basketball talk in about 6 months.